Okay, so during that city council meeting this afternoon, Mayor McLean announced she was stepping away for an unexpected press conference related to public lands. That topic has been in the headlines lately as a Republican-backed plan to sell thousands of square miles of federal lands across the West. However, that part of President Trump's policy bill, that was nixed late yesterday on a technicality. Yet, the engine behind the sell-off proposal, that'd be Utah Congressman Mike Lee, says he will pursue a new way to support President Trump to move that idea forward. Okay, so Joe Paris, I imagine that development and Mayor McLean excusing herself from the council meeting, that is obviously related, right?
Yeah, we were searching where the mayor went and why they went on a pause, and we found her right in the center of a national conversation. So it's an interesting conversation across the West, different perspectives, of course, from east to west, and we'll talk about that. But yes, the mayor speaking out, I should say, about selling off public land, specifically in the Gem State. Senator Maria Cantwell from Washington State, a senior member of the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, asked Mayor McLean to join her on a congressional call-out. Senator Mike Lee from Utah says he's now looking at selling off BLM land, not Forest Service land, in only areas within 5 miles of population centers. His goal is to sell the land to states or private entities for housing and infrastructure use. Lee says that housing prices are crushing families and keeping young Americans from living where they grew up. So this is his proposed fix. Stakeholders across the West, though, are pushing back, and that includes Mayor McLean. Speaking to congressional delegates about the impact, this is not imaginary land that's far, far away.
Mayor of the city of Boise, I'm looking out of my office right now at 2 distinct areas that are put at risk with this proposal to sell off public lands. Just yesterday, a resident said, well, how can they sell them off? They're public, they belong to us. That is the question we should all be asking and that we've got to fight for. The sell-off of lands would potentially block access to about 11% of the over 200 miles of trails that we have that lead from our city into open spaces.
The mayor also submitted and got passed an emergency resolution last Thursday at the United States Conference of Mayors, and that was opposing congressional legislation that could result in the sale of hundreds of thousands of acres of Idaho public lands. And it's a bipartisan issue here in Idaho. Mayor McLean is essentially aligned with Idaho Congressmen Jim Risch and Mike Crapo, Republicans. They spoke out last week about the public lands provision, specifically in the Big Beautiful Bill, both saying something to the effect of, after reviewing the reconciliation language, they do not support the proposed provision to sell off public lands. Remains to be seen if this new proposal changes their mind or what their reaction will be when Senator Lee puts that forward. But for now, a major concern, regardless, for people like Mayor McLean, things like the risk of wildfires.
Development in open spaces, in our woods, in our open spaces, and here at home in our foothills. And so the removal of lands, putting them in public lands in private hands, increases risks to our communities from wildfire, takes away the very culture and life that all of us that are communities right up against public lands rely on.
Again, it remains to be seen exactly what the specific proposal will look like. But Brian, public lands in the West is an interesting conversation. I spoke with Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson about this recently. When you have lawmakers from the East Coast or even places like Texas, places where they don't have this public land, there's a fundamental different understanding about the value of it to people here in the West. So it is interesting with this East Coast bias, so to speak, in politics, especially in D.C. It is interesting to see Republicans aligned with Democrats on this issue in the West.
Representative government, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? People out here, who's in favor of this, I guess is the next question.
Yeah.
We'll come and find out. All right, thank you very much, Joe.